Hello again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. We have debated for a lengthy while about this intriguing issue. What happens if you do not accept nor believe in a God of the Bible or even the Holy Quran, and eventually discovering that we all may have been thinking the same way, that we are living in a meaningless universe without any purpose? Many people seem to get stuck in dichotomies of thought. If you cannot think, like in the Soviet communism as it was, then you would be in favor of the US capitalism. That is, if there are different political opinions other than those we immediately think about. And there are many. Another dichotomy to consider is between traditional religion and secular atheism. So the question is, which team are you supporting? Richard Dawkins or the Pope? However, both of these worldviews can be very inadequate, and both have things to describe about reality which cannot be truly explained. Philip Goff wrote a number of interesting things in his book titled Why? The Purpose of the Universe, where he explores the middle ground between God and atheism. To start with, he was raised very religiously, his parents being Catholics, accepting various dogmas. Certainly, Sunday school has had some effect on him. He was certainly aware of spiritual, but not necessarily religious categories, and was thinking this option was being serious, but not as important, for it was a very fluffy thinking, as he puts it. But it has been changed as he became a faculty member at Durham University, where he was asked to teach philosophy of religion. So he taught about the arguments against God based on the difficulty of reconciling the existence of an all-powerful creator, in addition to the terrible suffering we found in the world. Then he taught the arguments for God's existence. Fundamentally, he too wanted to know the truth. One day he was peacefully watching some ducks quake in a nearby nature reserve, and he suddenly realized there was a startling lead. Simple and obvious solution to his dilemma, and found them to be compelling. The fine-tuning argument for God and the argument of evil and suffering against God, not actually opposed to each other. Fine-tuning arguments supported something much more generic and some kind of cosmic purpose for goal-directedness, and so his worldview was radically changed. He wrote about the most fascinating developments in modern science, wherein are the surprising discovery of recent decades that the laws of physics are fine-tuned for life. And so, for life to be possible, certain numbers in physics had to fall within an incredibly narrow range, and they had to be just right. The most striking key was that of the cosmological constant, and that is the number which measures the force that powers the accelerating expansion of the universe. We are all in there because the logical constant had been an odd number. Although it was extremely small, but was not zero. If the cosmological constant were a bit bigger, everything would have been forced apart so very fast, and not any particles could ever meet. And so there would be no stars, no planets, or any other complexities to be seen. However, if the cosmological constant was less than zero, it would have added more to the gravity, and this would mean that the entire universe would have collapsed back on itself. For life to be possible, this number had to be in the strange category of occupying extremely close to zero, without crossing over into the negative zone. It may be a coincidence that of all the possible values that finely tuned constants of physics may have had, and they just happened to have the right values for life, or the constants have those values because they are right for life. As we can see, the former option is not probable. The odds of getting finely tuned constants by chance is less than 1 in 10 over 136. And this option amounts to a certain belief that something at the fundamental level of reality is directed towards the emergence of life. And the author called it the cosmic purpose. We may be something in denial about the fine-tuning, because it does not fit a picture of science that we know of. Like as it probably was in the 16th century, when we started getting to know or grasping the evidence that our Earth was not in the center of the universe. However, every generation absorbs a worldview, and you cannot see beyond. Similar to flat Earth believers. That's a different conversation in a different time. Maybe we are in a very similar situation now. We may be ignoring what lies in plain view because it does not fit with a version of reality we are used to or familiar with. If the universe had not had the right numbers for life, we would not be around to worry about it. So we should not be surprised to find the fine-tuning. And so the philosopher John Leslie had devised the vivid thought experiment to show where the anthropic response goes wrong. Suppose you are about to be executed by 5 expert marksmen at close range. They load up, take aim, and fire, but they all miss. And again, they load up, take aim, and fire. Again, they all miss. And this happens time and time again for more than an hour. And now, you could think, well, if they had hit me, I would not be around to worry about it. And so, I should not be surprised that they all missed. But nobody would think of it that maybe their guns were tempered. Likewise, while it might be, of course, trivially true, and that if the universe was not compatible with life, we wouldn't be around to reflect on this matter. Right? Could the fine-tuning, therefore, have been just a fluke? Sometimes things come together in surprise and in unexpected ways without our feeling compelled to postulate. But as one can comprehend, there are limits to it. He further writes, are there not many incredibly improbable things we accept as just chance? Sure, life has objective values, and hence it is an outcome of significance independent of it being the outcome that happened to occur. A universe in which there are plants and animals and people who can fall in love and contemplate their own existence, and is much greater than a universe in which there is only the hydrogen. In this sense, the numbers which are consistent with such valuable happenings are special in a way that are other possible values of the constants, which are not. In contrast, there is nothing particularly special about me, he says, the writer existing, as opposed to whatever would have been here if, say, my father had married someone else. Author explains further. When I discussed the fine-tuning on Twitter, people expressed a sentiment that was brave to boldly accept something so improbable, like as if you were not scared to take it on. But it is not brave enough to believe highly improbable things. In my view, a commitment to a cosmic purpose is the only rational response to the evidence of current science. He further says that probably God provides an explanation of fine-tuning, but it is a very poor one. Maybe for our ancestors it made sense that a God who was so much greater than us could do what he liked with his creatures. But moral progress has taught us that each individual has fundamental rights that nobody, no matter how powerful and cognitively sophisticated, is permitted to. Full stop. He says in my book, Why, I focus on the work of the great philosopher of religion, Richard Swinburne, in responding to the problem of evil. He argues that there are goods that exist in our universe that would not exist in one with less suffering. If we just lived in some kind of Disneyland with no danger or risk, then there will be no opportunities to show that real courage in the face of adversity, or to feel deep compassion for those who suffer. Even if we concede that this is indeed a cause, I don't believe that God would have the right to cause or permit suffering in order to allow for these goods. A classic argument against crude forms of utility, terrorism, or utilitarianism. And now, just imagine a doctor who could save the life of 5 patients by killing 1 patient and harvesting their organs. Even if the doctor could increase well-being in this way, he would not have the right to kill and use the healthy patient, as at least not without their consent. Likewise, even if God has some good purpose in mind for allowing natural disasters, it would infringe the rights to health and security of the individuals impacted by such disasters. Now, Dr. Reimer had contributed asking the question, what is the possibility that we ourselves are God? Because we would have created ourselves in a distant future, at a stage of evolution where we would interpret time as a whole. Not only could that be possible, but it seems pretty likely for lots of reasons. Think about how many minds are on Earth too, and how can there be so many people on Earth with brains? Imagine if all intelligent beings were combined into one. A big bang or powerful existence. Good point. We could have used our subconscious, which may have more power and control over many things, if we would become conscious in our subconscious self. Who knows what we are capable of? Just imagine, memories materialize by themselves, and we are living in a memory or powerful thought enough to become a reality. So what if we were able to take control of our subconscious either when we die or some other way, and while we are right now could be slowly learning how to do this as we speak in our current year? Maybe in like 2100, who knows what technology could do by then, even, or 2200 or 2300. Thokozani Mwagi contributed, saying, "We are God, that is why you will never see God, because it is us. We are. We created ourselves without being aware. Even if we were aware, we could never tell anything about it, because we are such beings, and that is probably why God is described like a human father. We came from nowhere and really nothing, because we were never created. We always existed. Time is a misinterpretation. We are the magic of nature. We only die in this form, but like the wind, which will never die, that is the space between everything and it too is like the abyss that will never die. He continues, we probably chose all this just to forget because we are God, who got to have or to contain all the experiences. Remember, he says, gold also came from gold, which is the land and the Gaia, and gold never gets old. Gold equals God, who is the all time and all infinity. We are one with God, which never is separate from us, and he can see everything through our eyes. And Satan, is our default selves and the wrongdoing deity. He too is part of us. He is just a symbol of evil. God uses our feet to walk the ground, and he is us, the people, and everything in nature, and the universe altogether. We call this whole existence God, to communicate with and to have better understanding of life and existence. We are all one. That is why you never see your face. And that is why you will never know how you created yourself. Another author, R. Hohen, contributes, saying, is it possible that we are all God? Question mark. This is a very, very intelligent and astute question. He says, I got my work cut out for me. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready for the ride. Okay? He says, it has taken me more than 40 years of thinking, listening, reading philosophy, and experiencing, and finally to come to the conclusion that you are absolutely right. We are all God. But what does that mean? Can we do miracles? Should we be revered or revered by other people? Should we be worshipped? No. We should not be revered or worshipped by other people, because they are God also. But Robert, how can there be billions of gods on this earth? If all of us are God, who is the real God? Most people think there is only one God. How can you claim that there are many gods? No, hold your nose, 'cause here goes to cold water. As Eminem raps in one of his songs, there is only one God, not more than one. One God only. But we are all a part of God. We all are a part of the same one God. Did you ever have a jigsaw puzzle when you were a child? Did you ever see the complete picture on the box? Maybe you saw an airfield with many airplanes. And he further writes, maybe you saw a little girl riding a beautiful white horse in a green field with many flowers. But when you opened the box, there was no airfield. You did not see one single aeroplane. You only saw small pieces with some colors on them. You did not see any girl. There was no horse, not even one single flower. Were you duped? Did you fall victim to a con artist? Was the friendly lady in the toy shop pulling your legs? Did you return to the shop to ask your money back? Did you press charges for fraud? Of course not. The pieces are the picture. You just have to put them together. And so, it is with God, so to speak, in a very easy, simple language. God is a huge, loving jigsaw puzzle, and we are the pieces. We are part of the puzzle, but we are not the entire puzzle. After death, we return to our real home, a place where you are neither a woman nor a man, where you are neither white nor black, where you are neither a child nor a grown-up, where you are your true self, a part of the whole, a spirit that has chosen for an existence on the earthly plane to learn your lessons, to grow in love and understanding. We are God, who has created a computer game, our three-dimensional material world, and who has placed parts of himself on his own altar, the personalities, in his three-dimensional world, to learn, to grow in love. We are all his personalities. That is why it does not make any difference if you are white or black, rich or poor, a man or a woman. We are all his personalities of the one unconditionally loving being of light. That is why we should put a hold to sexism and racism. If someone attacks black people, he attacks God. Because God is black too. And he's white. And she's a woman. And he's a man. God is a Catholic. God is a Jew. God is a Palestinian. God is a Muslim. But strangest of all, because we are all parts of the same God, God is also an atheist, just as much as he loves deeply religious people who go to church to worship him 3 times every Sunday. Why is God not insulted by atheists? Why does God not fight atheists? Because God has no ego. He has no personal interests. He does not boast. He does not get back at a person if the person does not worship him. He himself allowed us to learn because he gave us a free will. God does not feel love. God is love. Thanks for asking this question. Yet another attempts to contribute. If God exists, why did God abandon the starving, the tortured, and the poor? Scientists authorized that reality could be a simulation. If it is a simulation, would the creator of that simulation not be a God? Some scientists postulate that reality is a simulation. Is that why we have hard limits in our universe, such as the speed of light, in the act of observing a photon affecting its behavior, similar to video games rendering, in which if a player is not in a section of the games in the world, the simulation is not rendered. Some high-profile scientists seriously entertain this hypothetical idea. I'm just a person in a STEM field, not a high-profile scientist, and I am unsure of how I feel about this idea. It is very intriguing, though I don't have empirical evidence on this to make a hard stance. Some high-profile scientists seriously entertain this hypothetical idea. So, hypothetically, if our universe is a simulation, would the creator or creators of that simulation not be God or gods? One of the creation myths of various religions may, or more likely may not be true, but the idea of a creator or creators would be true, and therefore all of the religious people would take this as an opportunity to claim that they would be correct all along, and that there is a creator or a God. Or does God imply that we are very special and there are creative things about us, and so he interferes with our lives? I think that would be just a little more involved, deity, and that God would also be a creator, right? Also, there is a question to follow up that other question. If there is a God, who created this simulation? Who created that God? I know this is a hypothesis, not a theory. Therefore, it remains unproven. This is a hypothetical question. I cannot go back and change the title of this question. Also, I do not really believe in God. I am just thinking about the implications of this hypothetical situation, the writer says. What does it mean to be a God? What would the consequences of discovering that we are in a universe that was programmed? Thank you for everyone for your interesting arguments. After researching more about this speculation of programmed universe, I realized that speculation about it is based on very loose ideas. And it is pretty much just philosophy at this point with zero hard evidence. There is not any specific consensus on this whatsoever. Therefore, I cannot stick with the idea that is supported by anyone in the scientific community, beyond it being just a philosophical, hypothetical scenario. I appreciate everyone's input though, and I still believe it is an interesting thought experiment. However, we discover an explanation in Wikipedia, the simulation hypothesis, as it follows. The simulation hypothesis proposes that as one experiences the real world, it is actually a simulated reality, such as a computer simulation in which humans are constructs. There has been much debate over this topic in the philosophical discourse and regarding practical applications in computing. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed the simulation argument, which suggested that if a civilization became capable of creating conscious simulations, it could generate so many simulated beings that a randomly chosen conscious entity would almost certainly be in a simulation. This argument presents trilemma. Either such simulations are not created because of technological limitations or self-destruction, or advanced civilizations choose not to create them, or if advanced civilizations do create them, the number of simulations would fire up exceeding the base reality, and we would therefore almost certainly be living in one. This assumes that consciousness is not uniquely tied to biological brains, but can arise from any system that implements the right computational structures and processes. The hypothesis is preceded by many earlier versions. The variations on the idea have also been featured in science fiction, appearing as a central plot devised in many stories and films, such as Simulacron 3, 1964, and Matrix in 1999. Human history is full of thinkers who observe the differences between how things seem and how they might actually be. The dreams, illusions, and hallucinations providing poetic and philosophical metaphor. For example, the butterfly dream of Zhuangzi from ancient China, or the Indian philosophy of Maya, and in ancient Greek philosophy, like existing things to a scene, painting and pose them to resemble the impressions experienced in sleep or madness. Aztec philosophical texts fused that the world was a painting or book written where Anaxagoras and Monimus likened existing things to scene painting and posed them to resemble the impressions experienced in sleep or madness. Aztec philosophical text theorized that the world was a painting or a book written by the Teotl. A common theme in the spiritual philosophy of the religious movements, collectively referred to by scholars as narcissism, Gnosticism, was the belief that reality as we experience it is the creation of a lesson, possibly malevolent deity, which humanity should seek ways to escape from. In the Western philosophical tradition, Plato's allegory of the cave and analogized human beings to change prisoners who were unable to see reality. René Descartes' evil demon philosophically formalized to see epistemic doubts to be followed by a large literature with subsequent variations like brain in a vat. In 1969, Konrad Zuse published his book Calculating Space, an automata theory, in which he proposed the idea that the universe was fundamentally computational, a concept which became known as digital physics. I still would say, if we consider religion at all, that the universe had to have some meaning and reason before the introduction of human existence. But the common sense and scientific understanding declares that the universe and its own has no meaning and no logical comprehension or any reason to. Only the human beings give it a reason and meaning. Only those within the humankind consider as being alien or originating from different planetary systems or other galaxies who probably have been around longer than humanity, therefore having developed the civilization, the culture, and scientific know-how, would have some knowledge thereof. Therefore, maybe they can enlighten us with their sciences. Maybe creationists have an answer for that, since, as we read, as the copied words from previous literatures of olden days, as with Eluma Elish, we discover in Genesis, wherein it is written that God created the luminaries to provide light for men, and so the universe was made. Let us put all aside and consider the scientific discoveries, thinking a little bit more open-mindedly. Indeed, what science declares sounds a little more logical than the universe on its own has no meaning and has no purpose, for it is the human mind that creates such a purpose and meaning after all. Maybe that is why humanity was made, or has been developed, by natural processes to create that meaning and purpose for the universe. Kevin Barr, the author, writes thus: if we are the creator of our own reality, does that include other people? Yeah, that's a good question. People are people. Mankind is the man in control of others. He has organized systems of control like military, corporations, government institutions, jails, and concentration camps. He controls nature. He controls science with his laws. He controls education with his universities and schools. Planet Earth, at the beginning of, say, April 2022, was well and truly still on the negative side of the game. Mankind and his forces of darkness were working to stay in control. On the 24th of April 2022, the Gegenschein recalibrated the light from the central sun of the galaxy, which began shining on Earth once again. The intelligent energy of the source of all that it had to intervene, because planet Earth and authentic humans, being human, have a very important role to play in universal development. In 1945, mankind dropped atomic bombs on other humans and vaporized them. That was not an action of a sensitive, developing human species. It was crude and began to spiral towards the destruction of planet Earth. It has been the humans being human that have kept mankind from destroying himself and others. There are 8 billion humans on the planet so far. We are now very close to an event that will be enlightening. I do not have a clue what it will be like, but I do know that the world's financial system is broken. I know the world's government systems are broken. I know that mankind has not got a hope in hell of dropping atomic bombs on anyone at the moment. Or have they? Your question is hard for me to answer because of the control that I do navigate away from confrontation with members of my family. Like saying, don't talk to me because I don't want to fight. I established my property as a free world zone in 2017. It works reasonably well until my daughter decides to own me. He says, as long as I see the humor, things are fine, but I'm sensitive, and she's cruder. So she sees my weakness and then exploits it tirelessly during the heat of a negative exchange. I do not control her feelings, and I tell her so. On the other hand, she blames me for her feelings. I shared that story because I know that is the problem that mankind has created with their laws, judges, and justice system. There's always some who want to blame, and then punishment can be administered as an example to others. We are creators of our own reality when we become mature enough to begin the process or becoming our potential creator being. Kip Wheeler, the author, writes, does everyone have a different reality? Everybody has a different perception of reality. There is still a reality. There, for instance, something that is real where we all live in. However, we cannot ever reach the there, even though it exists, because we have an epistemological barrier between us and it. Sometimes that barrier is the prison house of language. Sometimes it is the limits of human perception. Sometimes it is the boundaries of human intelligence or memory. My friend John really exists. However, I have never really seen John, just photons that bounce off of him. I have never really touched John, only sensed to the handshake through impulse or impulses of nerves that tingle in response to pressure. I have never really known John's thoughts, only vague, garbled outlines of those thoughts in the form of words, and even though I have only sensed as vibrations in the air teasing my tympanum and then mysteriously triggering electrical impulses in my brain. John and I are good friends, but we are forever separated by a curtain of flesh, a barricade of meat, eternally revealed from one another by a gauze of the senses. So, we all share a reality, but it is a reality we cannot taste, touch, see, or hear, except as nerve impulses that rattle in response to organic senses. It is sort of like we are all in the same ocean, but we are each in a different submarine, and we can only dimly sense each other's location as blips on a sonar screen. Blips are incredibly complicated and detailed. So it seems to us, but they are not and never will be the thing itself, leaving us trapped in our own little bubbles of consciousness and free to misinterpret all the ocean beyond the range of our senses, and sometimes misinterpret the ocean within the range of our senses also. We know the water's there between us, but we have to rely on sensors to tell us the depth, the temperature, and the current. And we rely upon float sensors that are individually calibrated and don't always give us the same results as the other subs around us. We only experience that ocean of reality differently and incomplete. But the ocean reality really does exist in spite of ourselves. We swim in it, but cannot fully know it. That is where we are at. And so ends this episode. Thank you for sharing and watching it. We will meet you by the next one. In the meantime, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.